Alright guys, so let's start looking at the daily time frame for today. As I've marked the two zones, the blue and the red. So the red zones are the weekly time frame. So let's take a look again. Where did I find that marking from? So the first red zone that I've marked from 1911 all the way to 1913 is the lowest of this weekly candle, which means that there could be a potential rejection. And if we actually look from H4 and also H1, we would see 3-4 touches around that area, which means that there are some sellers from the weekly time frame. But what I believe is that when I start looking at the smaller time frames, which I'm gonna go through with you guys after this, the price seems like they will be more towards the upside because of the daily, H4 and also H1. So now we have identified the weekly zones where potentially the next weekly zone would be at 1925 all the way to 1928. So that's the next target, around 120 pips above. Next, let's start looking at the daily time frame. So when I look at the daily time frame, I have identified the blue zone, which is at 1930 all the way to 1938. So that's a daily zone where I have marked as an engulfing fail over here. So this is the engulfing fail zone. This is the lower zone of the engulfing fail, and the zone above is the higher zone for the engulfing fail. So I have just marked the higher zone due to just taking low risk setup instead of trying to wait for the rejection around this area. Okay, so that is for the daily time frame. So now let's look at the H4. So what do I see from the H4 is that I would need to mark on my left. So most importantly, I need to make sure that we keep looking at this zone. This is our first H4 level, and then we need to make sure that in the same level there need to be a level of support that has been broken, which means that it used to be a support but then it has been broken. So since this is a H4 setup, I'm going to be using a purple box. So H4 is from 1916 all the way to 1914. We can make it even a bigger zone like this. So what do I see is that this is a potential zone. I mean, of course, every zone is a potential zone, but what we need is for it to be a confirmed selling zone. For what I want to sell is it needs to enter this zone and it needs to close as a bearish candle in this zone, which means that price needs to be pushed towards the upside again. And if it wants to sell from this level, it would need to create another selling engulfing, which means that for 4 hours it needs to be bullish and the next 4 hours it needs to be bearish, and that definitely indicates that price wants to reject from the area. But as long as it does not do that yet, we cannot assume that it is going to be selling from there. So next, this is the H4 first level. The next H4 level would be around this area over here. So why I'm going to mark this area is due to this engulfing fail. So this used to be a support level at 1920, but then price has been broken around this area. So as you can see, price broke this level of support and continue going downwards. So what I do to reduce my risk, I just take the higher zones like this, all the way from here to 1930. Next, where is my next H4 zone? So as I can see, the next H4 zone is all the way up here. So this is my next H4 zone. It is similar to the daily zone as well, which is at 1951 all the way to 1953. So next, let's just focus on potential buying zones and potential selling zones so that we are aware of those levels. Okay, so next, where would be the potential if it rejects lower? Where would we be waiting for the buy? So first of all, I would identify where is my where is my level over here. So first, for it to for it to be a level of support, it needs to first break a resistance. So let's just mark around this area. I'm just going to mark it like this. I need to identify to make sure that this level is a valid level. Okay, so how do I get this is that I need to make sure that, okay, this candle that I'm marking needs to be an engulfing sell. So this candle that I'm marking over here, it needs to be an engulfing sell. In this case, it is not an engulfing sell. So I cannot be taking this as my potential zone. Next, where is my engulfing sell that became a fail? So this could be a potential zone as well. Right, so this is not a valid zone. So why do I say this is not a valid zone? Is because if I pull a box all the way to the end, what happens over here is that price rejected all the way up. So let's just assume that these 4 candles did not happen yet. This broke above this purple line. So if you put a line, it is at the highest of the H4. So the highest of the H4 is at 1886.47. But as soon as price broke above, so as you can see over here, as soon as price broke above, it came back all the way down, breaking this level. So which level it's not supposed to break? It's not supposed to break lower than this, because this is the candle that we are assuming it's going to be our engulfing fail. So then this is at 1877. So this is an invalid setup. So it cannot be taken as an engulfing fail. Do you understand? So I'm just going to remove this. So this is not a zone because of that. We need to identify lower zones if it's possible. So where there is an engulfing fail and engulfing buy. So for me, there isn't any zones around this area. There is just daily zones waiting over here, but there isn't any H4 zones waiting. So now let's look at the H1. Alright, so I have marked a few areas over here. These are M5, these are H1, M30 levels, but I do not want to take any sells yet around this area because I anticipate for price to actually move higher based on the structure that it's forming right now. So let's go back to this. Right, so for me, what's important is that if price really wants to break to the lower side, I believe that first it should not break above this level. So let's just say that it's ranging around this area. It can be ranging around this area, but higher chance for it to fly and break. So beware on those taking the sell, because for me, if you really want to take the sell, you need to make sure that the H1 has been broken first, which means that the H1 from this low needs to be broken, and then any retracement up. So let's just say that if it respects this selling level, let's just say it drops like this, it needs to close lower than this yellow. Make sure you wait for a pullback into the higher zone, then you continue selling. Alright, so that is if there is a setup for the H1. But for me right now, things are looking quite unclear yet, because there will be a huge news tonight, is CPI. So please just wait for the news and trade the US session. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to be looking at trade opportunities tonight. And yeah, that's H1. M30 is also, let's see what's happening in the M30. So for me, this is going to be a very critical area where a lot of people might be focusing on trying to get a sell or whatsoever, but I believe that this area, if it actually breaks higher, is just going to continue up at least towards 1925 or even to 1931, which is our daily, our H4, and also our weekly. So that's actually an area where I'll be looking forward to for sells. Alright, so yeah, that's about it, and I'll send you guys more updates if I have before CPI. Alright, thank you guys.